Welcome to the Triple M podcast, Money Making Money, with myself, Mark, Albert, George Applicano. I guess your last name's Applicano too, Albert. Sorry, Albert. Say with our special guest, Ruben. I'm really bad with last names, so if you could pronounce your last name for us.
Yeah, I'm Ruben Greth.
Greth. Okay.
And you're with it's raising. What was it? Raising Capital.
Raising Capital Show.
I got a show. It's called the Capital Raiser Show. It's specific to multifamily, primarily syndicators and lawyers is what I interview.
Okay. Nice.
Right. So, okay. So Ruben and I go way back. We used to work for a big company and we used to do mortgages a while back. Right. And so that's how we kind of know each other and got into the investment game. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your story on how you got into the investment game, and then I'll pitch in on some things that made me look at the world in a different view.
Sure. Yeah. 15 years ago this month, actually, I came in to be interviewed for the Spanish mortgage team at this particularly well-known national bank. And so I thought it would be a good stepping stone to get into investments. My father was an investor, primarily single family dwellings back in the 70s. And he always told me, hey, I made my cash as an investor, not as a doctor or not as a military. So that always resonated with me. And later in life, I tried to figure out a path to get in. So after graduating college, started selling mortgages. That wasn't really helping me too much. And then found an investment group that taught a variety of strategies and also had a marketing aspect to their business. From there, I started a meetup to help with the marketing and to meet investors. And one gentleman came in from San Diego with a bankruptcy, and he was buying a bunch of fourplexes here in town. And I was like, well, what do you mean you have a bankruptcy? I come from the lending world. We don't lend on people that have bankruptcies. But he's like, hey, I raised the capital. So he took me out to a few of his properties. We did some videos. I put them on YouTube. We essentially talked about what we were going to do, how we were going to find it, what we're going to do to reposition it, how we're going to renovate it and get back on the market and tenant occupied within 15 days. And it was a really fast process. Aggressive timeline. Yeah, we were super aggressive, and it felt like surreal, right? You know, like me not having much investor experience and then all of a sudden working with somebody that was just crushing it really fast, or at least what I thought was crushing it at the time. But it was really easy back then during the crash, because we could cherry pick 20,000 unit, small multifamilies here in town.
Yeah.
We ended up he and I worked together on 22. He bought an additional 50 units. And then he's like, dude, I can't believe you raised 650 grand on YouTube. Why don't you focus on marketing? And so I did. And then I got a producer to fly in from San Diego, and we were going to write a book and do a CD set and go on tour, do all these things. We're trying to pitch our little program, our little, what is it called? It's like a trailer or whatever for the network. And then he started not showing up for our meetings, and I had money invested. So we started fighting. I went on my own and then tried to buy fourplexes on my own, but was really spinning my wheels, couldn't get any traction. So I kind of left. And then about 4 years later, I was trying to navigate my way back into real estate by selling fourplexes with one of my friends, Patrick O'Sullivan, who's got a brokerage here in town. But that kind of didn't work out for me. Yeah, Patrick's a great guy. So then I was like, well, I'm just going to hire a guru to teach me the syndication business. And I interviewed a bunch of companies and found Bakerson, who I'm currently working with. And they asked me why I was interested in multifamily. I told them I had some track record raising capital, and I saw it as a good tax-sheltered, recession-proof, recession-resistant asset class, and that it was a team sport. So I was looking for a way to get in with the group of people. They invited me to come on board with them. They needed help with social media, and that's how I leveraged my background and brought something to the table that they weren't too good at, which is social media and brand awareness, and then launched a podcast about raising money for multifamily syndication for the purpose of learning how to raise capital and also for brand awareness. And it's been a really cool ride. I've interviewed about 80 of the top syndicators and lawyers across the country so far.
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's very nice. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So the story goes, right? So I was done working at I was at the big bank, right? I was at the big bank, and Ruben had already left, and he was doing it as investing, right? And so then I was done with my job. I've had it. I had it with the boss. I had it with everybody there. I've had it with corporate world and all this and all that. And then I call him one day and I'm like, hey man, okay, so you're doing investing, right? How do I get into it? What do I do? And he's like, what do you mean? Like, well, what do I do? What I mean, I want to get into that. I want to do what you're doing. He's like, look, bro. He's like, you just gotta fucking do it. You just gotta fucking do it. Like, you know, and then he started pumping himself up and he's like, you just gotta get in there and just gotta fucking do it. And I was like, all right, okay, I do what? I don't know, but I guess I'm just gonna do it.
I gotta do it.
It's really about diving in, right? Jump full blast into the swimming pool. Don't stick your feet in and kind of investigate.
Yeah, and so I started reading books, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad. Started from there, started rolling, and then obviously now to here, right? But what kind of kicked you off? Like what made you go to that first meetup? What made you go? How did you connect with that investment? What clicked, right? I mean, obviously your dad, right? With your grandfather.
That was my father.
Your father. Okay, so your father already had that part of it, but what made you actually take the step?
So it was really more of going from college. I was partying a lot in college, and then eventually, like, I was looking at my circle of influence and thinking to myself, man, I do not want to be these people. And I started doing personal development, Tony Robbins type stuff. And then, Tony Robbins is always all like, stop what you're doing right now and write down exactly, your compelling reasons for what you want to do. And I would like read through it years later, and it would say, like, I would read my goals and it would say things like, I want to be a realty investor. And, so I had this implanted in me for a long time, and I was just trying to figure out a way to get in. So I joined a company that taught real estate education that's no longer around. And they taught me, like, I don't know, 25 different strategies, everything from seller finance notes to multifamily to wholesaling to rehab to negotiations to, I mean, anything and everything that you could possibly look at, and really didn't direct me into one specific avenue. And my focus was everywhere. Right? I was looking at hotel deals. I was looking at wholesale deals, trying to connect this person with another person, taking calls from people that I had no business. I had no idea what a subject to was other than, conceptually, but trying to put those buyers and sellers. And I couldn't figure it out until I finally got a focus by just doing one thing, which is multifamily, right? So I could focus on one asset class. If anybody brought me a deal that wasn't that, I would say no. And once I started saying no, that helped a lot. But I think that was it. I mean, really, the seed was planted a long time ago. And then once I decided to change my circle of influence, it was a lot easier to get focused and then find my groove in the multifamily space or in the investing space in general.
All right. So on your first deal that you did, right? So your own first deal, right? Can you walk us through that experience? How did that go? How many years were you already in investing, or how did walk us through your thought process on how that went?
Yeah, I had put a couple buyers and sellers together, some investors, and then on the first one that I actually had ownership of, that I wasn't getting paid like a marketing fee, I essentially was, like I said, I had a bunch of videos on YouTube. People were calling us, and over a long period of time, maybe around 8 months to a year, people would either fly into town or local investors would meet with us. We'd take them to our property. We'd show them our track record. We'd let them touch the physical assets, show them numbers, show them what we had done in the past, and then they would start investing. So we would just basically form a new LLC and put a joint venture partnership together, basically, joint ownership of an LLC. And then we would already have deals like under contract because we had 3 or 4 going at one time.
Okay.
Ivan was my partner. He would say, hey, these are what we are raising capital for right now. Do you have any investors? I'd say, yeah, we've been talking to these guys for so long. And a lot of times they'd skip, the first deal that we would offer to them, but then we would come back and say, hey, look what we're making. We're in a 60% equity position, cash flowing, totally tenant occupied. And they would say, all right, man, I'm not going to let the next one get by.
Yeah,
and
right.
then boom, they would invest. And all of a sudden, we took down a 4-plex and then another 3-plex and then a 12-plex. And then I had previously raised, I guess my very first deal I had done without Ivan. It was just a little 3-unit property on 11th Avenue in Buckeye, more or less, kind of in the ghetto of Phoenix.
I wasn't going to say that, but okay, right on.
So yeah, like we had some issues with there. I didn't know how to renovate it really fast and tenant occupied. I was kind of doing everything blind. We found some plumbing issues.
Did you do the work yourself, or did you contract that out?
I did.
Yeah.
On that one, I did all the work
Okay.
myself. And then after I started working with Ivan, he had a team. He was a micromanager of contract crew members and was pretty good at that. But on that first deal, the 3-plex, I raised like 40 grand. We bought it all cash. It was from a few different investors. My mom had 12,000 in it, and like I raised the other 30 or whatever it was from about 2 other people. And so we tenant occupied that property. It was cash flowing, and that was my first experience. So somebody came in. We didn't have a fence in the back, or I should say a brick wall. Somebody stole our water heater. We found all kinds of plumbing issues. Somebody had rigged the system to the back alley kind of funky, and there was like mud leaking into the plumbing. So I had to do all that myself. It was pretty gnarly. Yeah. First time, and I was doing the work myself, right?
Yeah.
So that was
we've been lucky, man.
Yeah.
We've been lucky.
But from there, after
kinda.
that, all the rest of the properties, it was all construction crew. I never lifted a finger or raised a hammer for those.
Okay. So on that property that you own, the 3-unit in Buckeye, right? So what'd you buy it at? What was your total repairs? Do you still own it?
No, we bought it for 40 grand. We sold it not too much later because we were in a crunch. We needed our money back. Me and the investors all decided basically to walk away. And after closing costs, we probably made like $1,000. Didn't make very much.
Okay.
That property today is probably worth about $140,000. So if I had just wrote into it, it would have paid for itself. And
yeah,
all of those properties that I bought, I think
Right.
a total of 22 units.
It should have been netting like 2,500 to $3,000, right? Now more or less, right?
Even back then it was like close to 2,200. Not too
Nice.
dissimilar. I mean, maybe I guess it would be a little bit cash flowing a little bit better now. But the idea is like, will you hear those concepts of buy real estate and hold it, not wait and sell it. So I've interviewed some people that have said the biggest mistakes that I've ever made, people that have syndicated or bought tons and tons of properties over many cycles. They've said the biggest mistakes that we've always come across is we bought and sold way too fast. If we had just bought and hold on, we'd be in a much better situation. And I experienced that myself in my first go around in investing. Okay. So, because right now I'd probably have close to $1 million of equity in those properties if I had not just flipped them. I flipped them all, made some cash, probably about $25,000 for my portion of what I did. And that was good money. And it was I got my foot in the game, and I thought that that's all there was to it. But then I realized that once I separated from my partner, it's super challenging to do things by yourself, at least for me. So it's good to align.
Now, did you go into all these with that you just do fix and flip?
Yeah, so a lot of my investors wanted a return, like a specific return on their investment. So the idea was always to flip those, and we did good on all of those. But the ones that he did outside, from different capital sources, he kept all of those, and that was the way to do it.
Yeah.
Okay. Right. Gotcha. Yeah. Our first multi-unit flip or whatever, right? We had people breaking in and breaking the windows, and it was.
We did have
tough.
a contractor, but we still put in some work ourselves as well.
Yeah.
But it was.
We had a guy that that was going to help us clean the yard and then moved in. He just moved into one of the units.
And they moved some guy else in too.
Yeah, here's $50, clean the yard, and then all of a sudden he just moves into the unit. Wait, what? Yeah. What happened? Well, it was vacant, it was empty.
And he brings another person too. It's like, no. Yeah, but honestly, dude, we've been lucky. So far, the flips that we've done, we've made some good profits out of them.
Yeah.
But yes, I think we should have kept a couple of them.
Yeah.
All right. So but I mean, either way, what we're doing is that we're taking the cash. We're going to invest in other areas that the cash flow is a little bit better, right? So the average sales price of a house here is $275. The average sales price in different states, so like Wisconsin, is about $50,000, right? Yeah. So better return on your money, and the rents are similar. So
similar
to per square footage, right?
Yeah.
Yep. Exactly. So tell us, all right, so when did you actually start posting on YouTube?
I think we're talking about, 2009 at some point.
2009.
I remember the first one that I did with Ivan was, I think we bought it in June of 2010. or maybe 2. Yeah. So I was doing videos for about a year before we started getting investors to actually buy, do the LLCs with us together and take down properties that way.
Okay. And so then with your investment, when you raise capital, right? So just to kind of help out some new people, right? So you acquired the property. So you have the property under contract. Your investor is going to come in and they're going to pay for what?
No, it didn't work like that at all. Actually, it was joint venture money. So someone would say, hey, we'd say, we're going to form an LLC. We're going to take down properties with your cash, and then we'll handle the rehab. We'll handle everything. Okay. So for we buy something for let's say there's one particular one that I can think of. It was in Glendale. It was a house with a 3-unit in the back, and we bought it for 72, put in about 12,000.
So it's a total of 4 units, right?
Yeah, a total of 4 units, house in the front, 3-plex in the back. And then basically we would just own it until we decided to sell it. Typically, because of the market, you couldn't get an appraisal to get too much higher than what you purchased it for, especially if you're looking to sell it right away. Even back then, lenders would be like, there's a 90-day rule. You can't, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, we would just take down, somebody would bring the cash and we would do all of the labor, essentially is what it was. That was our agreement. And then we would just basically cash flow and sell it for a profit.
Okay. Right on. That's good. That's awesome. All right. So tell me a little bit about Bakerson. How does that work? And
cool.
With
I
the
love
raising
Bakerson.
of the capital and all of that.
Very excited to work with Bakerson. It's a family team, father, son, brother-in-law, and a few other people, including myself. So Bakerson started with Bruce Willett, and he wholetailed is what he called it, about 2,000 houses between 2002 and 2014 in Arizona.
Okay.
And then started wholesaling other types of properties, land, hotels, RV parks, a mobile home park, and then saw the returns that these multifamily investors were making. They'd buy them, restore them, renovate them, start cash flowing, and then resell in about 2 years for a great profit. And we're like, well, if these guys can do it, we should be able to do it too. And we started syndicating properties, everything from an 8-unit up to 120 units is the biggest one that we've done to date. But coming from the world of wholesaling, we still had this mindset of, we'll find the deal, and then if the deal's good enough, we'll raise the capital for it. Well, that works great for single family and small raises, but once you start getting into, $2.5, $3 million raises, then you really have to have a communication structure and infrastructure in place to explain when, so people can have access to when they're going to get their money, see what's going on with the property. And we've kind of evolved from this model of finding the deal and then raising capital for it to what I've learned from my show is a lot of syndicating type companies basically go through a process with their investors and build a database over long periods of time where they first get them to know, like, and trust them, do an educational platform, teach them the inherent values of multifamily, the recession resistance, the diversification, the having all the properties under one roof instead of all over the place, the savings that you get in property management, having property managers all in one place. And also, the cash flow aspects of it and the cost segregation, the depreciation and appreciation, all the different benefits of multifamily, then explain to these people what it looks like to invest with you, when they're going to get their cash back, what's the return structure going to look like, how are they going to get communicated with. And once you have that database, then you basically present the deal. And we were doing it backwards at first. But now I'm actually exploring new types of financing. So some of the investors that I've recently had have been talking about fund to funds. They've been talking about raising money from institutional lenders or getting a broker dealer to raise capital for you, or working with the family office. So all of these new concepts, I think with these big people, these whale investors that basically write you, they're single check writers, they stroke a check, they really want to invest like no less than 5 million. So we need to scale up into about 200 units to get those kinds of people to invest with us. But through the network that I built on the show, not everybody that I talk to is interested in Arizona, but a lot of people have interest or have a database of investors. So I'm trying to create what's called a specific purpose vehicle, which is a type of fund to fund. And I'm learning a little bit I'm going to be doing a show about this specific type of fund called a deal to deal segregated fund, where an investor can come in and not blindly invest in your company, but they can actually see the PPM and review whether or not they want to invest into your fund, and then yet still have the option to diversify within your fund in different markets. So that's one of the
Oh,
avenues.
really? So in other assets, really?
Yeah, and,
Oh, wow.
and multiple multifamily. So it's a fund, but they still get to. It's not a blind fund. They get to choose if they want to be a part of it. Or
Right.
not.
So if you have like 20 different properties, they could choose 5 of those properties and diversify through those, right? Well, that's awesome.
Typically in a multifamily, you wouldn't have 20 very quickly, but maybe in a single family type of situation that would work.
I just put a number, right? I just put a number, but yeah.
So that helps me raise capital for properties that aren't related to Bakerson, that would be in different markets, because I have access to a lot of operators across the country that are looking for funds. So essentially we'd be turning ourselves from syndicators, at least in one aspect of our business, into like a private equity. So when syndicators or other operators need money, hopefully we can build the database and create the structure so that we can provide them with the capital and then take a piece of it that way in different markets where we're not associated.
Got it. All right. So explain a little bit. So our most of our listeners are new, right? So syndication, awesome. Right? So what does that mean? How does that look like? So say, let's, for you can give us an example, right? What is that? How does that start?
Yeah, really. So to put it in layman terms, syndication is just a group of people coming together with one goal, which is to buy a big property. The syndication really is just a pool of money, and the process of syndication means an operator or an investor takes a group of investors, a pool of investors, and manages their money in a real estate deal. Typically, in my world, it's multifamily, but syndication happens all over the country. You can syndicate baseball teams, you can syndicate casinos in Las Vegas, you can take down high-rise buildings in Los Angeles, all done through syndication. A lot of the family office people, they like to do shopping centers or other types of commercial, but in my world, it's all multifamily. You just basically teach people that they have options to invest in a multifamily deal that they would typically not believe they could actually take down, because most people think you have to be super rich to take down a multifamily. But really, if you can just pool your money together with other people, and then with a vetted operator, if you can find someone that like and trust that has a track record, you can actually take down large multifamilies and start cash flowing and receive the tax benefits associated to that. Yeah, but essentially it's just taking a group of people's money and then using it to purchase large multifamily properties.
Okay. And so then that, as an investor, right? So they have a piece of that property. Now, what kind of documentation or protection do they have because of that property? Are they on the deed, or is it just a note? Is it a certificate? What is it that they have?
No, in the world of syndication, because of the Securities Exchange Commission regulations, they require that typically if you're raising money from other people and then they have no active role going on, so essentially they're turning over their money and they're not doing anything, then you have to follow certain rules. And a lot of it is you create what's called a private placement memorandum. You let your investors look at that, and essentially it's a document that says these are all the things that could go wrong. This is how you could basically lose all your cash. You're basically saying, I understand all of the risks, and that's why it's so important to know the operator and their track record very, very strongly before you invest in something like that, because you could lose all your money. And there are some shady syndicators. It's not very common, but I've heard stories. I've heard horror stories of people putting in their life savings into these things, and then the operator disappears on them or does other kinds of shady things. Wow. So the nice thing about multifamily syndication is if you are an investor with $50,000 increments, is you don't have to put all your cash in one deal. You can put it in different markets with different operators, so that way you have your money in a lot of deals and it's diversified. And then once you get more advanced, you can start looking at putting your money in alternative assets like RV parks or self-storage units. And that's kind of our world, is like, you take your money and your hands off. Basically, a lot of people that are looking for time freedom, or you connect with them on their emotional needs, right? Because if you're just sharing hypotheticals and numbers and all the things that the lawyer wants you to say, nobody's ever going to invest with you. Nobody actually invests in a multifamily because they love multifamily for the most part. It's because they're looking for some type of freedom or some type of, goal that they're trying to achieve, like putting their kids
Yeah.
through college or something like that.
Yeah, I got it.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yes, it does.
Yeah, absolutely.
So do they with the syndication? Do they actually own a part of the property?
Yeah. So
They do, okay.
so an LLC is typically divided up just like they do on Wall Street into shares, right? And each investor takes a share,
Okay,
and depending on how many shares they buy, that determines their ownership and also determines what percentage of the property they can depreciate on their taxes. So if an investor comes in with 10% of the money that's required, they get 10% of the ownership of the property in terms of cash flow, equity, and cost segregation and other depreciation type of tax benefits on their taxes.
Right.
Okay, cool.
Right on.
Cool.
You use the words like a fund, syndication, vehicle, things like that. Like, is there a special license that is needed? Do you have to go through some type of training other than, your boots on the ground and doing what you've done so far?
No, typically all of the hardcore paperwork is done by a lawyer. So lawyers typically, depending on how good they are, charge anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 to create these
Ouch.
different types of syndication paperworks.
Yeah.
So
wow.
yeah. So, but they handle all those things and make sure that you're legal. You don't need a license to do it unless you may want a broker license dealer or some kind of securities license if you're raising capital and don't have an ongoing role in the general partnership of the company that manages the LLC or the property.
Okay.
But other than that, you don't need any special type of certification. It's very similar to, mortgages or selling houses, where if you have to have a license in order to raise the capital for that. But if you're raising it for your own deal and you're managing all the property and you're having an ongoing, role in the business as you're owning it, then you don't have to have a special license to raise the capital that way. As long as you do. So there are regulations that you have to follow, and your lawyer will help you with that. There's these things. I think they're IRS tax code 506, and then the special portion of it called 50. I think it's 504, and then section 506B and C, and both of those are typically what the exemptions that syndicators use to raise capital. Those exemptions allow them to raise capital from their friends and family in a 506B, and to actually advertise. Some people call it crowdfunding in a 506C, but there's certain restrictions if you do the 506C, like you can only work with accredited investors.
Got it.
And we are not CPAs, so please make sure go check your own tax code and all that fun stuff.
So we'll get into crowdfunding towards the end. But so how do you go about acquiring properties right now? How does that come around? How do you guys acquire properties?
Yeah, so different team members have different roles. I am not the underwriter. I mean, I've looked at crunching numbers, especially. It was a lot easier when I was looking at fourplexes. But on these big deals, our acquisitions manager, Ben Willett, basically can find different brokers that have access to properties that he has a relationship with, or sometimes he'll go through different means to meet owners of multifamily and then start creating a relationship and convince them to sell. So we've taken down a couple of properties that way with no broker involved, but primarily we're getting them from brokers that know us in Tucson.
Okay.
And there's not a lot. There's only a few people that have access to sell down there.
Yeah, and so this would be on the commercial world, right? So a little bit more on the commercial side than just single family. Because are you buying 1 to 4, or are you buying more units than that?
So we're buying, like, right now in our portfolio, we have a 74 unit, a 75 unit, a 90 unit, and then a group of 36 condos that we've been buying, fixing, and selling one at a time.
Okay.
We're almost through that project.
Is it all here in Arizona?
All in Tucson right now.
Oh,
Right.
wow.
Right on.
Okay, cool.
Right on. So yeah, so for the people out there at home,
out there,
well, because you could be on your phone, right?
TV land.
Yeah, 1 to 4 is residential. Anything beyond that is commercial. So that's the reason
in
why.
terms of lending, for sure.
Right, for lending. So okay, cool. So then, so you guys sometimes even go direct to seller?
Yeah.
For acquisitions? Right on. That's awesome. I know that's kind of complicated because with all the LLCs and all that stuff to try to figure out how to get that information, but
it's not too complicated. Honestly, the business model is if you find a seller, you basically get the the trailing 12 months worth of rent rolls.
Mhm.
And then you basically look, eyeball the property. And if you put in a letter of intent on that property, that gives you an opportunity to go in and do investigations, do your due diligence. And for multifamily, it's a little bit trickier than the house because you have to like scope the plumbing and look at some of the major things that could derail your investor returns, something like a chiller system or a roof or an asphalt across a full parking lot. All of those things need to be taken into consideration, but it's essentially the same thing. It's just on a bigger scale.
Yeah. Okay. Right on. And deferred maintenance and stuff like that. You also request that. Okay. All right. Right on. All right. So now let's go into the sexy part.
All right.
Crowdfunding. What do you know of it? How do you, so say for example, right? I've just been seeing websites, right? Websites that people are like, all right, well, I got $10,000. I want to put it into this fund, right? And I know you're kind of testing the waters on that, but what do you have any background or any idea on how honestly, how that kind of works?
There's a lot of people that have different definitions of what crowdfunding is. So some people just basically say it's raising money online. That's some people's definition. Other people's definition is there's an actual crowdfunding rule in the IRS that allows you to take increments as little as, I think, $5,000 and raise up to $1 million. And I'm not a lawyer, so check into that yourself. But other people are successfully creating these platforms. I can think of one called Diversifund, where they basically have a website and people can go in, and if they trust you, they can put in $5,000 or $1 million without ever picking up the phone and talking to you, which seems crazy to me.
I know, that's crazy,
but
right?
That's one version of crowdfunding. And then I think what other people think of when they think of crowdfunding is like those Kickstarter campaigns, things of that nature.
GoFundMe, things like that.
I'm not too sure about the legalities of what those things are, but crowdfunding can mean, depending on if you're talking to a lawyer or an investor or somebody who's not too familiar, they can have a different definition of what crowdfunding means.
Okay.
A lot of people also think of like the Grant Cardones, right? So they basically go on Instagram and say, come invest with us. You can invest as little as $5,000 and you'll get 6% or whatever return they're offering. And they actually they're legally allowed because of the regulations that they follow through their lawyer, to say, hey, this is the exact percentage I can offer you back. And it's not done with a deed of trust or anything like that. It's an actual investment. But that's another type of crowdfunding. And I think that's called a Regulation A. So I'm not too familiar, but I believe that's what Grant Cardone is using.
Got it.
And do you guys do a lot of crowdfunding, or is it just something that you guys?
So honestly, like my business model right now is not so much. I mean, over time, what I want to do is build a database of investors. But in the meantime, that doesn't solve our immediate capital needs. So one of the best ways to get that money is to create a partnership, like what we call a co-syndication, where you find somebody that either has a big chunk of money or has a group of investors and they like the return structure on your deal and trust your track record enough to bring like 10 people or 15 people. Yeah, it's kind of like a JV in terms of the partnership.
Syndication.
Okay. Right on. Okay, but then you guys acquire the property. So basically you're acquiring the property, either JVing it or raise the capital yourself.
Yeah.
Right. All right. Right on. So what projects are you working on right now?
So we started to sell a 74 units right as COVID hit, and it's been a struggle to get it across the lines because all of the lending parameters have changed. You need to have more reserves, et cetera. So we have a 74 for sale and a 75 for sale. We have a 90, and our old model was buy, fix, and sell multifamily, in a 3-year term, more or less, 18 months to 3 years. And we've really evolved and switched our model to legacy investing, what we call, where we buy it and hold it forever. And some investors may not be interested in that because their money would be in it for a long term in their mind. But what we're offering actually is people come in, they get their money back within 3 years and then still maintain all of their equity and their cash flow rights going into perpetuity for as long as we hold the property. So that makes it sexy for some people, where they say, so I get all of my money back and I get to keep ownership into the future.
Oh, wow.
I really like that.
Yeah. So it's a very cool model. I've seen a lot of syndicators. It's not totally common, but we're definitely not the only ones that are using that model.
Wow, that's really good.
All right. So then so with these properties that are right now kind of stuck up for sale, right? Refinancing, right? Because of the lending parameters. And that's what you're trying to do.
Typically we purchase things with bridge financing. So kind of like soft or medium money. Okay. And then And then we have to stabilize the property. And you're probably familiar with some of these guidelines, but you have to have 90% occupancy for 90 days in order to refinance
it. Yeah.
a big property, right?
Right.
A big multifamily.
Wow.
So that's what we're trying to do is it's hard to get above 90% in Tucson, but we should be able to do it on our 90 unit and get a refinance in place, either with a key principal that can bring liquidity to the table, or if we sell one of our 74 or 75s, that'll give us liquidity so that we can just refinance it ourselves.
Right. So your 90 unit property, what are you selling it for right now?
No, that one we're keeping forever.
Okay. So the 70, the 70, how much?
The 74, I think 4.6 is the one that we have under contract. And then we just added, and then the 75 unit, we just also put under contract. I forget what the sales price is on that, but it should be somewhere in that same range. We're selling it for
4 or 5,
4.5, maybe a little bit under, like 4.45 or something like that.
Right on. Cool, nice. Man. That's awesome, man. Love it. I mean, yeah, when we started raising capital, it was like, oh, wow. And this is like, people were just calling us and going, oh, all right, well, here's my money. And we were like, right. Okay. So how do we structure that? And how do we figure that out? Right. So we figured out, okay, promissory notes and things like that. And warranty deeds to help protect our investors. And so, yeah, but it's exciting to see what that next level looks like.
Yeah. You can have one investor in a note, I believe, without violating securities. As soon as you have two investors in a note, that violates some securities. So I'd be careful with that if you ever.
Isn't it? But there's also limitations, right? I think it's like there was like $1 million, 250,000 or something like that and below or something. I don't know.
So I think the rule is for raising money, as soon as you have more than one person that's completely passive, that doesn't have a role, that is now a security, according to some people. So that's something that the audience should be careful with, because we used to do it incorrectly. I used to have people, we formed the LLC. Yeah. But I mean, we weren't totally doing it wrong, because at
the end of the day, they had ownership, right?
They had ownership, and they would go to the properties. They do some selection of things. They would have the ability to say, hey, we want to sell. They would have certain things that a completely passive person would not have rights to. So I think we navigated that for the most part, except for on the 3 unit, the very first property that I did. I think I did some things that were not totally right.
But it was also, it was family though, right? Yeah, right.
So let's not say not totally right, but let's say like out of the box.
But yeah, typically you won't have any problems unless somebody files a complaint with the SEC and then they come look at your books.
Oh, okay.
So you have to have, some problems before you will actually run into some problems when it comes to raising capital.
Right.
If as long as everyone's making money, typically that type of stuff,
nobody's gonna complain.
People, exactly. You can get away with it, but that's not the right business model. I guess everybody should spend some time learning, the legalities of it, because we don't look good in orange, right? As my friend Shelly Peterson likes to say.
Or pink, as for Arizona.
Arizona. Oh, Jesus. Yeah. Right on, man. So that's, dude, raising capital has been a game changer for us, right? So we're now in that. Well, we're not in your area, right? We're looking at 20 and 30 units, trying to see how we can start coming up with those. So anybody out there that has 20 or 30 units, please let us know. We are definitely buyers. But yeah, man, it's been an amazing ride, and that's awesome. I congratulate you with all your success with
cool.
with Bakerson and
Thanks,
and
man.
where you're doing, because I know where we were at, right? And it was just a 9-to-5 job, and it just was
constantly looking to leverage you at a greater extent,
right?
And changing your commission structure,
oh my gosh,
over and over,
time.
Like when you're about to make a big payday, commission structure changed.
Yep. Oh man, exactly.
They control everything.
Right, exactly, and
your time, your pay.
Right. I was at a big bank, and they said, oh yeah, well, we can go ahead and advertise as much as we want. So as soon as we want more volume, we'll go ahead and just turn up the dial. Right. And I'm standing there for 8 hours, and I'm like, where's the business or whatever? We're too busy. We can't turn up the dial right now. Well, so whatever. Right. So either way. Yeah, I'm so glad that we are.
Every single company has that
dial,
that dial that doesn't exist, or that they don't want to move.
Turn on and off.
We can just turn it on.
But we're not gonna turn it on right now.
Right on. All right. So, any other markets that you guys are going to be going into, or?
So we have our eyes on Texas, Oklahoma, Nevada, Utah, a little bit of Colorado, and New Mexico. But for the most part, I would say we're focused on scaling in Arizona. We have a goal to have 10,000 units, and we know that we can't take down 10,000 here in town, right? Or here in Arizona.
Right.
Yeah.
So eventually we're going to have to create the partnerships in other markets. Or, I mean, I really like this fund, this segregated deal by deal fund, so that I can put other operators in touch with other capital raisers and then manage the group through our company. So you might say to yourself, well, if I have a $50,000 check that I can invest with somebody, this is kind of cool. Why would I not just go direct to the operator? Why would I go through you, Ruben? And the nice thing is if we put like a $5 million fund together, we can negotiate with an operator special terms that our investors will get that they wouldn't get if they just went in with a $50,000 check. So that would be, a very big area of interest for me. And that can typically the hottest syndication markets are the Southeast. So we're talking about Georgia, the Carolinas, Upper Florida, and some of those markets in the Midwest. Definitely people love Texas and Arizona, but it's so hard to find a deal here. I mean, all the economic drivers are in place. There's job growth, there's job stability, new companies moving in, rental income growth, for an operator. And all of those things are great, but it's so hard to find a deal because everybody from California has the proximity to us and they don't want to invest in the Southeast a lot of times. So they'll come here into our market where their dollar goes way further.
Yeah.
Right. And our spreads that's where our spreads get thinner. So and we get it. Now that's why we're also in other markets, right? It's like, that's the name of the game right now. So absolutely. All right. You guys got anything more?
Good.
Can you tell us where we can find you? Any of your social handles, things like that?
Yeah. So on Instagram, I'm at Capital Raiser. And then I have a show, capitalraisershow.com. And then if you want to get, updates from the show, just subscribe there, or you can go to Bakerston, check out our existing offerings, which is we're raising for a 90 unit right now. We're backfilling it. And then you can also sign up to be a part of our new deals just by going to bakerston.com and leaving your email right there.
Right on.
Nice.
Awesome. All right. Thank you. So do we do the exit?
Well,
What is it?
Well, I'm going to do the sponsors real quick. Okay.
Do it.
This episode was brought to you by Leads to Cash. If you need leads, we do have them. We also have the means of getting leads. We are part of a mentor program. Make sure that you go and check this video out and or the audio. All the links will be listed below. This episode is also brought to you by the Expanse Real Estate Team. We are looking for professional, experienced realtors to join the team. We have leads. We need people to help us work those leads. Cash Now Systems, still looking for a name, folks. Hit us up. Essentially, it is a Podio-based system, very intricate. It is flowing extremely well for us. If you guys need a demo or something along those lines, hit us up directly via email and or any of the links below in the I don't know.
In the video.
Right. All that stuff. Awesome.
Morning podcast.
Right. Exactly. So thanks for the Triple M podcast. Mahalo.
And remember, guys, if you want to get into investing, just fucking do it.
Just fucking do it.